I call to order the September 19th meeting of the Arvada Planning Commission. Ms. Brown, will you call the roll?
Yes. Jenny Wolfschlag.
Present.
Michael Griffith.
Present.
David Goff.
Here.
T.O. Owens.
Here.
Patricia Connell.
Here.
Doug McGee.
Present.
Steve Hannon.
Here.
The minutes of the September 5th, 2017 meeting have been submitted for approval. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? Mr. McGee.
Just one correction, just to eliminate any confusion, that we remove Michael Griffith as attending since he and Ms. Wolfschlag were excused at that meeting.
Thank you. The minutes then will stand approved as corrected. We have no general business and no reports, so it's time for everyone, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At this time, anyone may address the commission regarding items that are not listed in the public hearing on tonight's agenda. Do we have anyone who wishes to address the commission tonight? So now it's time for public hearing. At this time, I'd like to explain the procedure for public hearing. The applicant will be able to, will be given the opportunity to give a presentation. At that time, I will ask for people in favor of the applicant from the public to speak. After that, then those opposed, and then the applicant will be given an opportunity for rebuttal. After the testimony's been heard, the public input portion of the hearing will be closed, and we'll take discussion and questions from members of the commission. I'd like now to swear anyone in who wishes to speak at any hearing tonight. Please rise. Sir, are you going to speak tonight? Yes. Thank you. Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in matters before the commission are the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Answer, I do. Thank you. Sorry. The first item we have tonight is PDP 2017-008, the Nance Properties Preliminary Development Plan. Mr. Hannon.
Mr. Chairman, I'd request to be recused from this. I've known the Nance family for years and feel it would be best if I did not attend.
Thank you. I'll move that we recuse Mr. Hannon. All members, please vote. 7 yeses and 0 noes. Mr. Hannon, you're excused. We'll come get you when we're done. Is there a representative from the applicant present?
Yes, I'm Ralph Nance.
Thank you, sir. Just 1 minute. Let's see. So, staff, are the posting logs, staff report, and affidavit of mailing in order?
Yes, they are.
Thank you. And do you have a summary?
Yes. The applicant is requesting approval of a preliminary development plan to construct a 5,000 square foot office building and another 4,800 square foot warehouse building at 6783 Fig Street. The applicants intend to use these buildings for their business, Front Range Excavation. The property is approximately 1.9 acres in size and zone PUDI, and has a future land use designation of industrial, office, and retail. The facilities will be used for administrative staff and to store and maintain contractors' vehicles and equipment. The applicant is requesting to modify the landscape buffers along the western and northern sides of the property by reducing the width in some areas and reducing the amount of required vegetation. More information regarding this is in the staff report. After reviewing the application, staff concludes that the proposal is in conformance with the comprehensive plan and the PUDI development standards and recommends approval.
Thank you. All right, sir, we're ready. Would you please give us your name and address and spell your last name for the record?
Okay, my name is Ralph Nance, N-A-N-C-E. You want my home address or my business address?
Home or business is fine.
Business address is 5275 Marshall Street, Unit 206, Arvada, 80002.
Thank you, sir. Please give us your presentation.
Okay. I don't do this very often, so no laughing. So we are Front Range Excavating. Nance Properties is an LLC that I have that owns a building, but I've owned Front Range Excavating for the 30 years. Been in Arvada since 1988 with that company. We do commercial earthwork. We've worked on a number of projects in the city of Arvada over the years, as well as all around the Front Range of Colorado. We're a company of about 30 employees right now, and this office that we want to build over on Fig Street will help us to consolidate our operations, as right now we rent the office space that we're in, plus we also rent the shop facility that we're in, which is also over on Harlan. So this will really help us to be able to move into our own facility. So that's the purpose of what we're trying to do with going through with this project. So we wanted to stay in Arvada. I looked at a number of other pieces of property, but none of them seem to fit. This one does. So without anything else to say about that part of it, I'll move on to what we're doing. As was previously said, it's on a 1.9 acre piece of ground. It's vacant. It's over in the industrial park over there off of 64th and Gardenia, behind the Walmart area there in that little light industrial park area. The building we want to put up is a 5,000 square foot, one-story building with a brick front on the front, as well as the two sides. The building otherwise will be metal in the back, and the second building is a 4,800 square foot maintenance building, which is also behind the office building, as you'll see here shortly. And then that's where we'll have our offices. We have 6 employees in there, and we have 2 guys that work on our equipment. We do light maintenance on our equipment there. Most of our time, our machinery is all over Denver. So the use of the yard is limited mostly to our trucks, which consist of, we have a few, 5 semi-type trucks, and we have 2 tandems, and then a couple of water trucks and mechanics truck. So not a lot of equipment, but that's what we would park in the yard at night. We operate Monday through Friday from like 7 to 3:30. Our trucks usually always back in the yard by 3:30 or 4 o'clock, and we usually leave about 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning, whenever they leave. So then our office is open from 8 to 5. So that's kind of how we operate. The equipment that we'll park in the yard is all operational, stuff we use almost every day. We don't keep anything that is like storage equipment, if you will, stuff that's old and beat up and that we don't use it anymore. We don't have any of that. So everything that we have on the site is usable. And then we actually use less than 5% of the property for screen storage outside, which we'll use for equipment whenever we have it in the yard. This gives you an aerial view of the site. And this is 6783 Fig Street. The Easter folks are just south. You can kind of see their building on the right corner. And then we're part of this whole industrial subdivision, which right now there's nobody else there except for Easter and another company, Prescient, I think it is, just south of us as well. This gives you an idea of the layout. The landscape areas are up in front. The detention pond is on the north. The building's in blue there with the parking lot in front. And then the maintenance building is behind the office so that it's screened by the office. We use recycled asphalt in the yard so there wouldn't be any dust that blows. Recycled asphalt doesn't get dusty. And so they'll be at least 8 inches thick to accommodate the fire department. That was per their request. And then there'll be concrete around the building there, as you can see, an asphalt parking lot in front. Everything will be gated and fenced. And so that's kind of how it looks right there. This will give you an idea of the east elevation, which faces the street, the materials involved with that, the CPU, different look on it. So it was trying to accommodate what the city planning department wanted, so we'd have a various different look on the whole thing. And that carries over to the north and the south side. So people driving up and down the street will never see the metal part of the building, which is in the back on the north side, as well as the shop itself, which is hidden by the building. And the landscape area on the, what you don't see in this elevation drawing is to the right, as I'm looking at it, is north, and that's where the landscape area is, and all our trees and that kind of thing are there. So anybody coming up from the north would not be able to probably see the building because of all the trees that are going to be there sheltering it. And this is the west elevation. This is just the west side of the shop, the door that we use to access the shop from the west side. And it's all ribbed metal in the back. Oh, that's it. That's it.
Very good, thank
I
you,
guess I don't
sir.
need to say a whole lot more. You want to ask questions now or later?
No, sir, we'll have a public comment time, and
Okay,
then
yeah.
we'll have some questions for you in a
You
few
bet.
minutes, I bet.
Okay.
I'll now open the hearing for comments from the public. First, those in favor of the application. Any opposed to the application? No? Sir, then we won't have, are you opposed to the application? Please, if you'd like to speak to the commission, please come to the podium. If you would, give us your name and address and spell your last name for the record.
Peter Beyer, 14319 West 69th Place, last name B-E-Y-E-R. I represent the HOA of Maple Valley, which is on the north side of Ralston Creek, just to the north of the site. The only comment I really have is that Ralston Creek Trail is extremely heavily used, and it's a gem of the area. The proposed landscape plan on the north sounds very nice. The trail curves just a little bit there, meaning that from the trail, the western profile would also be visible. I'm just wondering if there could be considerations made for the view from the west as well. Not necessarily modifying the building facade, but potentially landscaping on the west side. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Nance, would you like to address his comment?
Address the one that he just made?
Yes, sir.
Okay. We spent a lot of time looking at the different ways we could do the landscape areas around the building. So what we ended up doing actually was providing more landscape area than we're required to. If you'll look at when you look at the plans, you'll see that we actually have more landscape area than we're required to have. And so part of the problem was with all the trees, particularly on the west side, is because of that being a zone future for what it was going to be. We weren't too concerned about that. Also from the standpoint of just that accessibility to the property and the use of it for the stuff that we have, because the trees were going to, the city, we had the north easement vacated by Excel, but the city wanted to keep it. And so we ended up trying to figure out a way, so we got bushes and stuff in there, but planting the trees puts us beyond into our areas where we can actually drive around and move the equipment and trucks and stuff, and the trees started encroaching us tighter and tighter as we were trying to accommodate the fire department and what they wanted to do for being able to come in and turn around back there as well. So that's part of the reason some of those trees, if you look on the drawing, you'll see where the fire department has a lot of that west side allocated for their turnaround spot. So that would be my answer to that.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
At this time, I'll close the public input portion of the hearing. I now open the hearing for discussion, questions, and comments from members of the Planning Commission. Mr. McGee.
Thank you, Chairman Owens. Just a couple of comments first. I really like the idea of the short grass prairie native mix that you're going to use and some of the buffer around the building and the low-lying shrubs. I think that's going to save water, which I think is a good idea for any kind of building and stuff, so I appreciate you doing that. I think it's a good idea to have the access that you have to your property, the access point for all your trucks and equipment. On the south side, seems like the traffic comes around pretty quick from 68th and Eldridge onto Fig, and I'm sure at rush hour it could be fairly busy, because I think they probably use that street as to get access to 64th and up to 72nd. So I think you've positioned the access point for your building pretty well. So a couple of questions, if you could take the microphone. Overall, I think it's a really good design of the building. I think you've done a good job. So you are going to purchase this property and own this land and thus be responsible for all the landscaping in the building and...
Correct.
Okay, great. So the last thing, the block wall that is on the north side of the property, it goes north from your office building, and then does it go north continually along the north side of your shop building?
No, they didn't require that because the building's behind, it's behind the building, and there was a requirement for how far it had to go back from the front to the back. The back, it was supposed to be like 40 feet. The requirement is like 40 feet from the front of the building, but we went the whole 50. So we actually went 10 feet further than was required for that, just so the whole thing would be continuous with the block. And then there's that screen wall that goes around the north side of the metal building. So there's a block screen wall that goes down that north side too. If you could see that, where it shows storage yard,
Right.
there's a screen wall that runs down that.
So that's different than the chain link fence, but it's
Yeah.
not like the block
Well-
wall that's faces to the east.
No, it's not like the wall on the building, but it'll be similar because it'll be a block wall.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's going to block some of the view from the
Yes.
Ralston Creek Trail, because
Yeah.
that...
Well,
six-
plus all the trees. You don't see it on this drawing because it doesn't have the landscape plan, but there's 21 trees that are out there in that
Right,
north
in those-
side. It's not just a prairie center on that north side. It has all those kinds of grasses, but there are 21 trees back there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it is a barrier wall that goes on the
Yeah,
north side of that
yeah.
shop building. Well, I think that's
Yeah.
that's a good, and plus you
Yeah.
say the trees will help
Yeah.
kind of
So
restrict the
view
view.
for us comes from the people that'll be zoned the same as we are on the south side, and then eventually the west side too even, but they're gonna be zoned similar to us, or
Right.
build similar type
Industrial
facilities.
office, sure. Okay,
Yeah.
that's all I had. Thank you, Mr.
Okay.
Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Griffith.
I'm gonna stand here.
Oh, thank you, Chair. First, my question is for the staff. Basically, the landscape buffer for this is an adjacency in the north and the west of a park, Maple Valley Park. What would that typically be, the landscape buffer?
It would basically be double. If the reason why we are willing to accept the modification is because there is a privately held piece of property to the north and west of this that is master planned or has the comprehensive plan designation for industrial. It's currently in the county, but if it were to be annexed into the city, we would zone it the same, probably same zoning PUDI, which would mean there would be no buffer requirement between those two. So we took kind of the middle ground between the no buffer requirement and the full buffer requirement and allowed them to do the 10-foot that's being proposed.
Okay. And then I just want to confirm the issue with putting trees on the north and the west sections has to do with the turnaround for fire requirement. Is that correct?
Yeah, if you look at you want me to bring that PowerPoint up? I don't know if you can see it on that.
I have the plan
You got a
going right
plan?
here.
So that west of the shop, the area west of the shop
Yep.
is the fire department turnaround area there.
I see that marked on the plan
Yeah.
right here.
So all that,
Were there any alternative locations for turnaround for fire equipment or anything like that that was,
No,
no? Okay,
no.
that's it, thank you.
Tried a lot of different things, but that, yeah, that's where that had to be. That was more or less there, kind of where they thought they'd want it.
Mr. Goff?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to clarify, you did mention that you had around 30 staff, right?
30
And-
employees, yeah.
Yeah, and so your parking is 20, so at any given time, I think you suggested maybe you only have a handful of administrative staff and a couple.
Yeah, there's like, well, including me, there's 6.
Okay.
I'm more part-time than I am there.
Okay,
That's just the way it works. So there's usually 4 people there regularly.
okay,
My son and I are typically out running around town somewhere, so we're not there very often. So there's 6 people that are in there total.
okay,
And the other employees all are at different job sites all over the city of Denver. So they don't report to the office at all.
okay, okay.
Everything they do is turned in, you know, either electronically or manually for them as far as paperwork goes, stuff like that.
All right, super. Thank you for that
Yeah.
clarification.
Sure.
Ms. Wolfschlag?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the landscaping that you have put on the plan, you know, along the north side of the property and fronting to Fig Street. You know, I think there's a nice mix there of native and some trees. But I would express some concern about landscaping buffer on the north and west side of the property. You know, I walked this area along the Ralston Creek Trail, and I do believe that there will be some visibility to that north and west side. And I think there may be some possibilities. I know you said it was in an easement, so trees are difficult to plant, but I do think there are some, you know, like narrow, tall evergreens or something that doesn't have a large canopy, so it wouldn't affect the fire department necessarily, but could still provide some visual buffer from your proposed yard area to the adjacent properties as well as the adjacent neighborhoods and trail areas. That was more of a comment than anything.
Okay.
And one question for staff. I'm assuming, but I wanted to confirm with staff that there would be no improvements to Fig Street required with this project. And in with that is sidewalk included on Fig. Is that existing or proposed?
That is existing sidewalk, so it's going to stay as existing. They're only proposing to do their entrance on Fig Street and provide some ADA ramps.
Okay, thank you.
A question for staff, just for clarification. The north side, does it have an adjacent property, or is it open space to the north?
There is actually a piece of privately held property to the north of this site, and it wraps around to the west side.
Very good.
And then the park is north of that.
And it's in the county, correct?
It's currently in the county and it's zoned agricultural, but if it were to come into the city, we would zone it similar zoning with light industrial designation.
I understand. Thank you very much.
Did you want to see it? Because they can bring it up and you can see it.
I think I understand on the, I was just trying to get clarification in my head
Okay.
about which way. You know, it's a little turned around in the map, so thank you. If there's no further discussion, the chair will entertain a motion. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. McGee. There you are.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that PDP 2017-0008, Nance Properties Preliminary Development Plan located at 6783 Fig Street, be recommended to City Council for approval, subject to the conditions stated in the staff report, item 1, page 10. This motion is based on the findings of fact and approval criteria on pages 9 and 10 of the staff report.
Thank you, Mr. McGee. The motion is to approve. Is there any discussion of the motion? I like this plan. I mean, I think it's a good halfway, given that we don't know what's in the future to the north and west. It seems like it's a good compromise, and I'm pleased that you're willing to make that compromise. So I'll be supporting the motion. Seeing no other Ms. Connell.
Just a comment. Thank you for the clarification in reference to where the other employees would be located because of the parking situation.
Seeing no other discussion, all members please vote. We have 6 yeses and 0 nos, so that motion passes. Good luck with your project. Mr. Hannon, would you care to join us? Yes, yes, sir. Thank you for coming out tonight. We sure appreciate it. All right, our next case is CP 2017-001, which is the Comprehensive Plan Amendment, the 2017 Bicycle Master Plan. We don't have posting logs for this, do we? Yes, okay. Thank you. Lost my script. So we'll make the staff report part of the permanent record. And sir, if you'd give us your name and spell it, and your address for the record. No? He's staff. Very good. Thank you, Joe.
Just real quick, there was a posting requirement in the newspaper, and that has been taken care of.
Thank you. So we'll also enter the posting log as part of the permanent record. And then, please, we're ready to entertain your presentation.
Fantastic. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the Planning Commission. Thank you for your time. My name is Wesley Dismore, D-I-S-M-O-R-E. I'm a traffic engineer here at the City of Arvada. And on behalf of the Public Works Department of the City of Arvada, I'm extremely pleased to present the results of our 2017 Bicycle Master Plan process, which is the 2017 Arvada Bicycle Master Plan. At this point, an amendment to the comprehensive plan is requested by staff to incorporate the Bike Master Plan into the 2014 Arvada Comprehensive Plan and to update the references in the text of that plan to reflect the most current plan documents. If adopted, this plan would be considered an element of the comprehensive plan and would be the city's guiding document for the planning, development, construction, maintenance, and operation of on-street bicycle facilities throughout the entire city of Arvada. Here to tell us a little bit more about this plan is Jessica Fields on behalf of Tool Design Group, which was a consultant that was selected in order to run the entire plan process. Afterward, of course, we will entertain any comments and are here to answer any questions posed by members of the public or members of the commission. So without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Jessica Fields and Tool Design Group.
Thank you, Wesley, and good evening. So I know that you have all received a copy of the plan, and so we're not going to go over it in a lot of detail during this presentation. We're just going to hit some of the highlights from this process and some of the results we might expect from the hopeful adoption of this plan. So personally, I'll say, we've been working on this for just over a year, and it's been a joy to work in the city of Arvada and to get to know the citizens, to get to know the city itself and the bicycle facilities and some of the trails. It's just been a really good process, and so there's some things that stand out to me and to my team about this project, and so I'll just hit some of those first. So first of all, we just had a really great visioning and goal setting portion of the project. This image is from a public open house that we had last July, and we asked people at this event and through some other avenues, what's the one thing you want to see, different with respect to bicycling in Arvada? And we heard some pretty common themes. We heard about connections, needed connections. We heard about people wanting to feel safe and people really wanting to access a variety of things. Recreation was a big thing, no surprise, but also just day-to-day transportation kinds of trips as well. We attended a couple of different public events that were were events held in the city that weren't specific to our project, but that we wanted to be at so that we could really talk to everyday citizens about what they were looking for in this plan. This is a picture from Trails Day. We were also at the Taste of Arvada event in late 2016. That just gave us a really good perspective on the city and on what people wanted to see, but also what people's existing issues were with the bicycle network. Just a picture from Taste of Arvada. We had just a really good working relationship with the stakeholders that were involved in this project. We met numerous times with both an internal stakeholder committee as well as an external committee. So just various departments within the city that have anything to do with really biking and implementing bike projects. And some of the external partners, some of the groups around town, the Arvada Bicycle Advisory Committee, Sustainability Advisory Committee, folks like that who really were able to give us some perspective on what it's like today, but also talk about how they could be involved in helping make things better in the future. We had an online map up, which was up last summer, where we got a lot of good feedback. People were able to enter places in the city that were existing barriers, existing issue areas, but also routes that they would like to ride more. So we got a lot of good information from this to be able to start to think about where improvements were needed. One thing we also did is what's called a level of traffic stress analysis. It's a little jargony term, but it's basically a GIS-based technical analysis that takes into account the comfort of the streets and routes with respect to bicycling. And so high stress is bad. Those are the red lines. We don't want that. So this helped us think about the streets that are already maybe pretty good for biking, but maybe just need some additional enhancements, but also the streets that really aren't good, that would need a higher level of investment to be good. We asked the public, both at an event as well as through an online survey, about what kinds of bicycle facilities they would like to see. And this is consistent with what we hear in our work around the country. People really want protection. They want to feel safe. You actually, trails aren't listed here because this plan was focused more on the on-street facilities, but people love trails, as we know. But when you can't do a trail, here's some of the facilities along a street or on a street that people really would like to see. So we took that into account. And all of that really fed into a network map. It's really, one of the main highlights of the plan, and you'll see that in the plan itself. We believe this is a really implementable network. There's actually a lot of recommendations in here that are quite cost effective. A number of what we call bike boulevards, which are low speed, low volume streets that don't need a lot of work to become comfortable bike streets. And so there's many of those, and there's some other lower cost things like bike lanes and some buffered bike lanes. The plan not only includes bicycle network recommendations, but an important part of creating a better bicycling city is to have really a full suite of program elements as well as good city policies that support bicycling. So we have a number of recommendations in the areas of education, enforcement, evaluation, and encouragement in terms of creating some new programs, but continuing some of the things you're already doing. And we also have some policy recommendations for the city to take on, things like creating some new upgraded design standards that incorporate some of these bicycle facility types that we proposed. Another project highlight was that we were able to focus on Old Town. We had a chapter of the plan, or we have a chapter of the plan that really looks a little more closely at Old Town, makes some more specific infrastructure and even program and policy recommendations to take what is already such a thriving place and make it even better for biking, and really take advantage of the G-Line station opening. And so with that, I just wanted to highlight a couple quick expected results. My firm does bicycle master plans all over the country, and we've worked on, really been fortunate to work on some that have led to some pretty amazing results in terms of things on the ground. So I'll just highlight a few of those. Let's see, okay. So one is really increased ridership, right? One of the points of doing this is to get more people out there biking for all sorts of reasons. But designing facilities and implementing the facilities like we've proposed in this plan can really get at that 60% number you see there, that interested but concerned segment of the population. Maybe it's the families, the kids, seniors, people who just don't feel safe on a typical street without a bike facility, who want something much more comfortable. So the plan will help you get to that and will really help you tap into this big segment of the population that would like to bike. Multimodal streets, I mentioned, as an example, the Bike Boulevard that's included in the network recommendations for you all. And this is just a picture of one in Minneapolis. There's actually, the nice thing about these kinds of streets and many kinds of more bike-friendly streets is that they're more comfortable for everyone. You often have a lot of benefits for pedestrians, people who are taking transit, and safety benefits for vehicles. And so I think that that's a result that is really positive and something that we see happening here in Arvada. Strategic projects, so often a city adopts a plan like this and then has to decide where to start, right? What to do first. This is an example. We did the Fort Collins Bike Master Plan a couple years ago, and this was their first protected bike lane pilot project here on Laurel Street, and it went really well. They piloted it for a year, and this was a direct result of the plan we did and the prioritization included. And then finally, award and recognition. I think that taking the city from silver bicycle-friendly status to gold and to something higher eventually is a goal of the city. And so that's something that we've seen happen through our planning projects in the past. This is just an example. For CSU, we did their bicycle master plan, and they recently became a platinum bicycle-friendly university, one of only a few in the country. And really many of the things highlighted and why they got that designation were direct recommendations in the plan. So that is something that is really just a nice benefit for cities or universities to have, is that kind of recognition and be able to brag about something as great as that. So with that, that's the end of our presentation, and happy to take any public comments or next steps.
So we'll have comments from the public next, and then we'll have you back. I'll now open the hearing for comments from the public. First, those in favor of the application. If you could give us your name and address and spell it for the record.
Edward Rothschild, and I'm at 14358 West 88th Place. And thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. I'd like to, as a preface, I've been involved with the Arvada Bicycle Advisory Committee and Bike Friendly Arvada, involved in the cycling community, both in Arvada and around the city for quite a while. And I want to thank the city in particular for funding and undertaking the effort for the plan itself. And I wholeheartedly support the proposed amendment to the comp plan. I think the plan came out very nice and sets a strong network. I just want to touch on a couple of points that I think are worth keeping in mind that build on the presentation you just had. One is I think it is really important that it focused on interested but concerned riders, because that's who we need to get out on the streets. There's cyclists like myself who are comfortable in many environments, but that doesn't represent the bulk of the potential ridership. The other issue or other point I'd like to make is I think it's really important to look at the policies section, because those policies really provide the framework that the city can build from. So as new roads go in, as repairs get made, those policies will help develop the facilities to make bicycle ridership increase and safer in the community. And many of them, if you catch it early on, are at low cost or no cost. So the policy part, I think, is very important. It was mentioned about Old Town. To me, that's a very important piece. I don't live anywhere near Old Town, but I like to visit, and it's very difficult to maneuver your way through Old Town on a bicycle. So I think just that piece alone and the emphasis it gets is very important. And then finally, the implementation strategy that's presented is very sound. It really builds on what we can do now at relatively low cost while keeping in mind if there are capital dollars to invest, to direct those dollars in the most effective places. So again, I appreciate the plan that's been presented, and I wholeheartedly support it as part of the comp plan.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Are there others who wish to speak in favor?
I'm Ellis Barker, 12143 West 68th Avenue. That's B-A-R-K-E-R. I'm speaking in favor of adoption of this plan. I've been part of the transportation function of Arvada for a number of years. I've served twice, 2 terms on the Arvada Transportation Committee, and presently serve on the Arvada Bicycle Advisory Committee. And I've participated in a number of this data collection for the plan, and it is fundamentally a good plan. However, it's not something this commission can deal with, but I do have a number of questions in the plan of how it can be implemented, namely because it involves so many departments of the city. Coordinating the plan and implementing it seems extremely difficult to me. And we've had a great deal of difficulty at this point of implementing small incremental changes to the bicycling in Arvada. And I've ridden nearly all of the streets in Arvada over the years, so I'm familiar with a number of the ins and outs of bicycling. But I have questions about implementation and how it can be accomplished, but do speak in favor of adopting this.
Thank you. Sir, if you'd give us your name and address and spell your last name for the record.
Yeah, my name is Brandon Figliolino. That's Figliolino, and I live at 7893 Allison Way, Unit 302. I see some new faces, so welcome, and thank you so much for all you do for the city. Again, my name is Brandon, and I am a member of the Arvada Bicycle Advisory Committee, as well as the Park Advisory Committee, and I stand before you in full support of the Bike Master Plan. I believe the city staff, as well as Tool Group, and the citizens and community have really worked together collaboratively on this project, and I think it can really benefit the community as a whole. So I urge you to adopt it today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
I'm Michael Raber, R-A-B-E-R, at 1662 Sinton Road, Evergreen, Colorado, and I'm on the board of Bike Jeffco. I'm also an instructor with the League of American Bicyclists and a frequent rider of your roads, following Steve Selhe over here, who lives in Arvada and knows every little nook and cranny of every road and every bike path through Arvada. And I support you adopting this because this is an umbrella document, very comprehensive, covers a lot of area. And yes, it's not something that's going to happen immediately, but it gives you not only a roadmap on what other cities who are striving to get a higher level of bicycle-friendly status with the League of American Bicyclists are doing. This is a document which is needed for you to acquire the next level in your status on bicycle-friendly status with the League of American Bicyclists, which is sought after. You already have a status, but the higher status is reflective not only of sustainable neighborhoods, but also of economic development. And I can tell you that as Bike Jeffco, we've interfaced with Tool Design before, a very competent group of transportation planners and bicycle planners. So appreciate the input they have done with this, along with Wesley. And I can tell you that I very much support your adopting this plan and moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Steve Selle, S-E-L-L-E, 11449 West 85th Place. I've lived in Arvada since 1989, and I fully support this amendment to implement the bicycle master plan. Arvada is, to me, a great place to ride a bike. And there are other places in the city that are not so great. And believe me, I've been there. And I think this would take us up to another level that would make it even more important. I think bicycle commuting is becoming more and more prevalent. I think this plan supports that, especially that sections that deal with the G line whenever it opens. And, you know, I just would like to say that I think it's, I'd like to see the commission certainly vote in favor of this.
Thank you very much. Any others that wish to speak in favor of the plan?
I'm John Durand. My address is 11970 West 67th Avenue, Arvada, Colorado. I would like to speak in favor, but I would like to suggest some amendments to it because I think there's some things missing. Should I be speaking in favor, or how should I speak?
You're last, so.
Oh, okay.
However you'd like
so
to speak
it doesn't
is
make any
fine.
difference. I had worked to try and develop a presentation, but I don't know how to get it started or change slides.
Sir, your presentation looks pretty lengthy. We'd probably like to keep comment.
How many minutes?
Less than 10, if possible.
I will be less than 10.
Thank you.
The master plan, one of the items in it of criteria is, does it promote, improves the welfare? And I think it does. I think that's a key item. Previous slide, next slide, just press there. Oh, all right. Okay, thank you. I don't think that when the master plan was developed, if you take a look at chapter 2 of the report, it didn't actually list any of the policies of the comprehensive plan. And I thought that was a weakness. When you get to the staff report, it does, but it didn't reference that we're looking for a multimodal level of service for street, all street types, and I think that's sort of missing. Policy T1.3 is listed, but it calls out for a system and a trail system that accommodates all bicycle types. In the staff report in Exhibit A, I'm under Amendments 3-7. It indicates under Policy 5.1 that the words bicycle and trail master plan are being, so I presume that's the bicycle trail master plan and the comprehensive plan, is being replaced by the bicycle master plan. Well, there was items in that trail, in the one in the comprehensive plan, that are not included in the bicycle master plan, and that leaves a confusion in my mind of what's the intent. 70% of the selected 20 improvements are on pavements on major streets. But bicycles, that only accommodates a very few of what the report calls the enthused and confident riders, but it really doesn't provide anything for people who are not. And so the Group A people are well provided for. And I would say everybody who spoke here is a Group A rider, and that doesn't include me, and I'm in the 60%. And I'll tell you, I'm not going to get on a bicycle lane on a major street. One item that was discussed and by a person from O'Toole is, people want to feel safe and they want connections. And I think it was a problem for me that there was no information developed of where are the safety problems in Arvada. I mean, there was no consideration of the potential for injury for the other 60% who want to ride there. Safety, they had 4 factors in prioritizing where projects would go, but safety was not one of the factors in that prioritization. Here's a exhibit that was developed by the police department, and the green and the orange line or magenta are the different sectors, and those where are the accidents for police and accidents for pedestrians and bicyclists. And I think it's important to have a bicycle master plan that addresses safety. I mean, for a $60 million plan, safety ought to be a key element in the consideration of where we're going to make improvements. In terms of potential for injury, there is a much higher potential in injury if you're in the street. It's based on the kinetic energy of the various riders or whatever you have. And just so you could, because it was so vastly different, I developed another scale but you can see the kinetic energy or the potential for injury is so much greater on a street than it is on a side path or a sidewalk. In terms of the connectivity, there are, under the low stress concept, there are islands that need to be connected, and I acknowledge that 100%. But connecting those islands with on-street bike lanes does not make for a connected low-stress network. And I have a concern over the way that this was developed, because you can't have a total low-stress network if those islands are not connected with low-stress things. There was a Parks and Master Plan that had community trails, or essentially wide paved sidewalks. And I would like to see, in addition, some consideration made to these improvements of the side paths or the trails or the sidewalks or whatever you might call them, so that it would be a place to ride for the other people. I had suggested a new policy be adopted. This is obviously up to the commission to change any policy, but it would incorporate a future for the other riders that are not within the people that can easily accommodate, all the people in shorts. Maybe in a summary, I think people would rather ride on the side. It's safer for most people, and I would appreciate some modification to the plan to acknowledge that a lot of the development should include accommodation for all riders and not just putting all the emphasis on just the on-street pavement. Now, I heard this thing about the moving up to silver or diamond, but I looked at the criteria on that, and part of the criteria is the more on-street lanes that you have for bicycle lanes, for arterial streets, the higher your points go. Another criteria is the fewer accidents you have for commuters, the higher your credit, or deaths for commuter riders. That policy, that in order to get higher points, doesn't give you any credit for reducing the number of school kids that are killed riding their bike to school. It doesn't give you any points for reducing the number of accidents. So I think if you would consider any modifications to the policy that would be helpful for the people in the picture that don't feel comfortable just riding on the bicycle on the pavement. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Would the staff like an opportunity to respond to any of the public comment?
Absolutely. Thank you. First of all, thank you everyone for coming out to take the time to share your opinions and considerations. There were a couple things that popped up during the comment that I would like to respond to. First of all is that this photo is actually was used, I believe, you took this photo, right?
I didn't, but my staff.
It came from the original presentation that Tool Design Group made to us in order to basically to try to get the job here to do this plan. We really like this photo. It actually speaks a lot to the methodology that we adopted because, as you can see, that photo is of West 86th Parkway. We've got a family with one adult, 2 young children riding on a side path along the side of a very busy street. West 86th Parkway, we all know, is a high-speed, high-volume road. And we use that as a sort of touchstone to remember that putting lines on a map and putting down bike lanes are not going to be sufficient solutions for our interested but concerned rider. So unfortunately, we're going to have to express a difference of opinion with Mr. Durand regarding whether or not a bicycle facility on a street can be safe and effective and inviting and welcoming, even for the 60% interested but concerned rider. We do come up just against the limitation in the available space in the city that we do not have the option of putting wide side paths along every arterial road or even every major collector, given the amount of existing development we have and the potential for infill. The other issue is that on many roads that have either a large number of intersections or a large number of driveway crossings, side paths, when not well designed, can actually lead to an increase in the number of injuries or crashes because riders on bikes are traveling faster than a pedestrian would, and many drivers in that context expect only to see pedestrians crossing the street on a sidewalk or side path context. So there are a number of reasons why the side path or trail type of designation was used in certain circumstances and not in others. The reality is, given the land use and the transportation network that we have in place right now, it would not be possible to make a citywide bicycle facility network using side paths and trails. We also had the good fortune that in 2016, the Parks Department went through the process of doing their own parks, trails, and open space master plan. In that process, they sort of, some of the references that were in the comprehensive plan referring to a bike and trail master plan no longer relevant because trails have been spun off into parks, and as a result, we decided at the beginning of this process to focus on on-street facilities since the Parks Department just did all of this great work. So there are some references in here that say, we do want to build on the work that the Parks Department did. We thought that their work in the Parks, Trails, and Open Space Master Plan was fantastic in terms of providing a framework for how to create a citywide network of bicycle facilities in parks and open space, and that our work would be to figure out how to help people navigate from their neighborhood, their school, their local shopping center context into some of those trails and open space areas. So in that case, it is correct to say that we did not incorporate potential for the reduction in the number of bike crashes or a safety factor specifically into prioritization. That was because one of the original pieces of data that we pulled in order to start working on the plan was a database of all of the bike crashes that we had observed, and we were not able to find a sufficient pattern. We'll say that I haven't seen that graphic from the police department specifically. It did seem like it included pedestrian crashes, and we'll just say that the focus of this plan was exclusively on bicycles. So while it may be true that there are some hotspots that we could address in terms of overall bike and pedestrian safety, we did find that it was not going to be a useful prioritization factor to base our recommendations for improvements on the location of a few bicycle crashes. So I think that was everything, and if it wasn't, I'm going to let her.
Thank you. At this time, I'll close the public input portion of the hearing, and now we will have discussion, questions, and comments from members of the Planning Commission. Ms. Wolfschlag.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just like to take a minute to acknowledge all of the residents and those who took time to serve on the advisory committee or take part in, taking time out of their day to work on this master plan, because I do think it will provide a roadmap for implementing more bicycle routes with the city, and I think that's an important piece for the city to look at. And so I would like to acknowledge all those who took time out of their day to work on this project. That's all.
Thank you. Mr. Hannan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also would like to thank the team that put this together. This is a very well thought out plan. I loved the section on Old Town and Gold Line. I've tried to bike down there and it's very difficult, so the changes you've made there are phenomenal. I like the implementation plan where you came up with a prioritized list and proposed costs. I thought that was good. It's a wonderful plan that took care of most of my bicycle concerns. You didn't lower the hills on Wadsworth, but other than that, you did real well, or Ward Road for that matter. But it really is a well thought out plan, trying to get bicycling more added to our city. So thank you so much for doing that.
Ms. Connell.
Just about everything has been said in reference to the extensive information that has been provided and the in-depth studies to create this plan. Bike lanes, and I happen to be a runner, and bike lanes sometimes are easier to navigate than the sidewalks. And I've seen several people do that. I would also say that perhaps if people have safety concerns, that could be addressed by other areas and in in-depth, not necessarily an in-depth study, but and also that persons in a community who are healthy contribute a lot to the community. And just again referencing the bike lanes as issues for runners also. One thing, the safety issue, to address that and possibly offer some suggestions to the community in large of how safety can be addressed for pedestrians, bicyclists, and other athletic activities. That's a whole other story, but this is a master plan that provides for the future also.
Thank you. Mr. McGee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I agree with the other commissioners who commented on this being a very strong master plan. I enjoyed reading it. I thought it had a good balance of narrative and charts and graphs, and the appendices provided great detail, well written, good historical references to the previous plans and the other documents that they looked at. Thought the state-of-the-art modeling, the low stress analysis that was done, very fascinating and varied, and the look at national standards from a variety of groups I thought was very good to position our VADA's network in a good light and find out what we should be doing. So a couple of comments that struck me that I thought that were very positive to me. The bike trains, the bicycling school buses reminded me of the suggestion also to have walking school buses to get kids out of their cars and walking or biking to school with parent supervision. I thought that was great. The wayfinding proposal to improve directional signage and wayfinding is critical, especially in concentrated areas like Old Town, or where you've got connectivity to other trails or to other networks and those kind of things. So I think the wayfinding is critical. The parking plan recommendation is really critical to implement. We've got some very high-use areas, Old Town, the Stinger and Lutz Sports Complexes, the Arvada Center, Apex Park and Recreation, the Apex Center, all of those places really, we need to know what kind of parking is needed for bicycles at all of those high-use areas. Some of our parks would probably be included in that. I like the recommendation, the mention about e-bikes and electric assist bikes, that the city needs to revamp ordinances and look at the new state law about electric bikes. Fortunately, we've got a councilman who is an electric bike rider on occasion, and he can give us some good advice on experience and what he's encountered. Really like the idea of the bicycle-friendly business and Arvada employee incentive programs. I mean, that's the low-hanging fruit to get them to ride bikes more. Now, I know the city has purchased bikes for staff to ride from City Hall to meetings nearby, and so I think the city has already started thinking that way, and we can encourage them to do it even more. The temporary street interventions, kind of like guerrilla marketing for adapting areas and stuff, I thought was great. I didn't get the Old Town Cruisers or the bike committee involved with those kind of interventions to get people to understand that something has changed, new signage or new bicycle network is changing. So a lot of things I really liked. I thought the proposed bicycle network made a lot of sense. It encompassed the entire city and looked at north, south, east, west, and I think for our community it can be successfully completed using most of the bikeway facility types that you recommend. That you didn't include all of them, but at least 4 or 5 of the 7 that you had in your plan were things that I think our community can embrace and include. I do want to make an observation that the Old Town Bicycle Network, I was surprised that we did not include the beautiful Grandview Plaza that goes over Wadsworth Bypass to the east of Old Town, was not included as a low-stress way to get into Old Town. I mean, I live in southeast Arvada, and that is the way I would get into Old Town. I'd go down Pierce, cross Ralston Road, and get into that beautiful historic neighborhood that's east of Old Town, and cross across Grandview and that beautiful plaza that's built. So there was no addressing that, and I think that's a missed opportunity. So I would like you to look at that. So I do have a couple of questions for either the applicant, for the consultant, Ms. Fields or Mr. Dismore. If you could come to the microphone, I've got some questions. Just a few. I thought it was a great plan. I enjoyed reading it, and I'll file it away with the Parks, Trails, and Master Plan that they completed just a year ago. So my first question was the 280 respondents that were the online respondents and the respondents from the Taste of Colorado. Good sample. You know, the appendices showed that there were some underrepresentation, that we had more men than women, and I don't know if that's common, that we see more men than women that are active bike users across the country. So that is, Ms. Fields is saying, yes, that's common. So, and also we had, and of course Jefferson County is one of the oldest counties in the state. We're very upper age here. So, but we were missing, boy, the young adults, 30 and younger. And maybe just you could tell me, and Ms. Fields could as well, do they have different interests and different requirements for a bicycle network, for bicycle use, than older residents that were the ones that responded primarily to the online map?
So in Arvada, at least I would say that you might not have known it to come out to some of our events, that the respondents were skewing a little older. We had, for example, the entire Old Town Arvada Cruisers group show up at one of the events on a whole kaleidoscope of bicycles, which was pretty wild to see. In my experience so far, the short answer is no. Most people, regardless of their age or their physical fitness level, are looking for one thing, and that's to feel safe. But I don't know if you have anything to add.
Yeah, I would agree with that. You know, and I think some of the online outreach, it can be a challenge to reach everyone, right? It's going to be the people who are pretty interested in this topic who respond to the survey, which is why we tried to be at the events that were happening in the city. And Wesley mentioned even, I think it was the public meeting where the cruisers happened to be nearby. And so we really intentionally had the public open house for this event at the park and at a time when we felt people would be easily able to stop by and maybe not even be planning to come to the meeting itself. So it's always a challenge to reach certain segments of the population, but we did try a variety of things to do that. But we do know, from research that, like Wesley said, everyone wants the safe and protected facilities, but particularly, research does show particularly those appeal to women, to people who are riding with children, and to older adults. So really, the segments of the population that aren't your typical bicyclists in spandex. So designing for those people really makes it better for everyone. So.
Well, I think you needed heavy bike users, or those that know, like some of these people that commented, they know every trail, every back street, and every part of the network. And only do you get good information if you have people who have that knowledge and can share it. And I think you got those. I was happy to see that the biking barriers map that you put in there was geographically widely distributed. Every corner of the city, the central part, east, west. So that tells me that we got a good ideas of what was good and what we need to correct. So I felt good about that. So a couple of last comments and a question. So briefly, what's the definition of the complete streets policy? What is that? That was referenced in the plan just once or twice.
As a policy recommendation, So a number of cities around the country have passed a complete streets policy. Sometimes it's an official ordinance or resolution, but it's generally a policy that the city agrees on that says that all types of road users, pedestrians, bicyclists, motorists, transit users, and could even include, all types of people as well, if it were really, really inclusive in that way. The streets should be designed for all people. And so it's, there's a variety of ways you can enact a complete streets policy. It can be actually really high level, what I just said with maybe a little more detail, but sometimes it goes one step further and it's actually tied to design standards and sort of national guidance to say, well, this is what it means to consider all users. And it doesn't mean to stripe a bike lane on every street. It means, let's think about the context and look for those opportunities to make it safe and comfortable for everyone on all streets and just have that be a value of the city.
Okay, great. Thank you. So last comment, I want to thank Mr. Duran for his analysis, the time and effort. That was a good look for us to look at some of the criticisms and what we could have done, and maybe some of those policy issues will be in a different document rather than this kind of overarching master plan that kind of gives a big view of what can happen and then starting to implement some of it. But maybe for the two of you, can those interested and concerned riders, which is the majority, 60%, can they, through public education and other means, can they be encouraged to ride in a separated bike lane or in a bike lane along a street? Can we get them to do that?
One of the other projects, one of the first projects that I worked on here at the City of Arvada was the construction of a bicycle training course on the grounds of the Jefferson County Head Start building.
Yeah.
That facility has already seen a huge surge in demand. I just got an email today from an education coordinator
for Bicycle Colorado that they need to add an additional date to their summer class schedule down there before the snow starts falling because they've had so much demand. And that's the short answer, is that yes, absolutely they can. It depends on education. Some people who had not been exposed to riding a bicycle at a younger age and are only starting to get onto it now are probably not ever going to be comfortable on some of those on-street facilities, and that's fine. And especially for folks who may have challenges with mobility or other kind of special circumstances. But the more kind of education we provide for younger folks, they're going to age into riding on any street, anywhere they can find a scrap of open pavement, which you know if you ever go look at the skate park around dusk.
Okay, great. Those are my comments. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Griffith.
Thank you, Chair. I just have a simple question, comment. It's a logistical piece. I'm really supportive of what you've done here. How are we going to increase education, enforcement, whatever, to keep people from parking in bike lanes? On 64th, I see it all the time. And what I've seen recently is somebody duck into traffic to avoid a parked car in the bike lane and then get back into the bike lane on their bicycle. And I know that's just not safe. So I don't know if that's in here and I missed it or...
So the short answer is closer coordination between the Public Works Department and the Police Department. We've actually begun doing that. Engineering staff have been having weekly meetings with a traffic sergeant who's been assigned specifically on a traffic liaison detail. That is kind of a policy level. So a couple of the things we have in here are enforcement recommendations. I think, so here we are. A couple different recommendations: improve traffic enforcement, improve enforcement trainings, but one of my personal favorites is develop a court diversion program for traffic offenses, and that's when we do have people who are causing trouble, whether it's bicyclists or motor vehicle operators. The policy, if that kind of policy was enacted, it would be an opportunity for them, instead of getting a punitive fine, to go through a kind of an education program targeted at adult bicyclists or adult motor vehicle users. So,
excellent. Thank you.
So I thought it was really well done. I will admit that it took me several nights to get through it. I think Mr. McGee may have read it several times in those nights, but I read it as nighttime reading, and will admit that it was late and I might have gone to sleep a couple of times. But very well done, and I appreciate everything, all the work that all of you put into it, because it's clearly a very good piece of work and well laid out and easy to understand, which is sometimes hard to do with these kinds of things. So I appreciate that very much. Mr. Goff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Living in the northwest part of the city, I see bicyclists all the time. I mean, they're not the commuting type, but they're the recreational type wearing the spandex. So I appreciate all the thought and the comprehensiveness in this plan. So I think it's going to make a huge difference in the city. So I appreciate all the work you guys have done, and I appreciate the community coming out to talk about this evening as well. Can I make a motion, sir?
I have one more. Ms. Connell.
Just summarizing everything that everyone else has said, but it's obvious that a lot of time and effort was placed into this, and there was a listening to the community as a whole. And sometimes because someone isn't necessarily involved, for example, bicycling, that it's important for the city to recognize and provide safe and easy access for people who are interested.
Thank you. Seeing no further comments, the chair will entertain a motion. Mr. Goff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that CP 2017-0001, a resolution by the Planning Commission for the City of Arvada, Colorado, to amend the City of Arvada Comprehensive Plan 2014 to incorporate the 2017 Arvada Bicycle Master Plan and make additional revisions related thereto, be adopted. This motion is based on the findings of fact and approved criteria on page 3 and 4 of the staff report.
Thank you. Is there any discussion of the motion? No. Seeing none, members, please vote. We have 7 yeses and 0 noes, so we have adopted the comprehensive plan, Arvada Bicycle Master Plan. Thank you very much. We have a couple other items to discuss. I had a discussion over the last couple of days with Mr. Griffith and Ms. Wolfschlag. They will, along with myself, not be in attendance on November the 21st. Given that we'll have just 4, I think it prudent that we cancel the 21st meeting, given that if anyone had an emergency, we wouldn't have a quorum to have the meeting. That's Thanksgiving week, just in case anybody was wondering. And so, given that, we will also need to cancel the 7th because that's election night, and this room will be in use for cheers and tears, I suspect. And so then Ms. Brown has also asked me to cancel October 3rd and 17th. So with that, I will move that we cancel October 3rd, October 17th, November 7th, and November 21st. Any discussion of that motion? Seeing none, please vote. All right, we have voted to cancel the next 2 months' worth of meetings. Any business from staff?
Yes, just one other item to remind you of. There is a joint workshop with City Council regarding the Land Development Code on October 9th, and that will be here in the council chambers.
Okay, and can I add to that? Sorry, I'll be fast. It starts at 6 o'clock, but there's 2 items ahead, and Rita suggested that you guys don't come until about 7 o'clock. When you come into the council chambers and they start your the Land Development Code workshop, she would like you guys to sit, if you would, at the staff seating so that you're by microphones and stuff. Okay, thank you.
Thank you much. All right, we're adjourned.